Hi guys, it's David here from Writing Resources, and this video has been made to help you understand superlatives and comparatives. Now these are extremely important if you're studying any aspect of English, specifically if you're an ESOL student or anyone on the functional skills course as well. So this video is going to help us to understand how to use superlative and comparative adjectives appropriately, both in speech, in reading and in writing. So what are superlatives and how do we use them? So first of all, we're going to look at the dictionary definition, and I'm going to explain what this means in simple terms. So what is a superlative? A superlative is a grammatical comparison that indicates an extreme or unsurpassed extent. Essentially, what this means is a superlative is an adjective that indicates whether something is the highest or lowest extent of something. How do we use these? While superlative adjectives are used to describe an object, which is at the upper or lower limit of a quality, so for example the tallest or the smallest, the fattest or the highest, they are used in sentences where a subject is compared to a group of objects. If you're unsure about this, have a look at the teacher's top tip just at the top of the slide there. So it says there, teacher's top tip, superlatives often end with the letters EST. So if you have to have your writing assessment or something like that, and you need to decide whether a word is in fact a superlative or not, a little indicator would be if it ends in EST, chances are it's going to be a superlative. Now we're going to go through some of the common superlatives that you would have experienced in everyday English. If you have a look on the left, we have our list of superlatives, and on the right we have examples of how these are used in sentences. So our first superlative on the left hand side there is the word brightest. In a sentence, it can be used like this. He was the brightest learner in the class. So this word brightest will be classed as a superlative because it is the highest extent. So out of everyone in the class, there might be 30 people in the class, for example, but the person we're referring to is the smartest or the brightest in this case. The next one, smallest. I chose the smallest puppy to take home with me. So even though this is a very different word to biggest, it's at the opposite end of the spectrum really, it is still a superlative. It ends in EST and it is telling us the lowest extent of something. So rather than choosing a big or medium-sized puppy, this person has chosen the smallest one, and again smallest would be a superlative. We can also use it in other ways as well, so it doesn't always end with EST. We have words like most famous. So the example is, the most famous person I ever met is Boris Johnson. So we're using that as a superlative to point out that this is the most important or the most famous person compared to anyone else that this person has met. You've got the opposite end of the spectrum here. We went from most, now we're looking at least, but this is talking about emotions. So this superlative says least upset. Jamie was the least upset that the lesson was cancelled. The last one, dullest. I hate maths. It is the dullest lesson I have to take at college. So if you need to pause the video now, spend a bit more time going over these, please feel free to do so. We're now going to go ahead and have a look at a few more examples. Look at the example sentences and insert the correct superlative adjective in each gap. So this is just a quick activity to help actually apply your understanding of the superlatives that we just went through. So if you have a look at number 1, I love English. It is the blank lesson in the world. So what you need to do, you need to think back to the superlatives we went through in the table. Also think about any other superlatives that we haven't mentioned and see what would be the most appropriate word to insert in that space. Number 2, I went to the concert last night. It was so loud, it was the something concert I've ever been to. Number 3, Jamie gives a lot of money to charity. He is the something person I've ever met. And number 4, our final one, I can't stand going to the shopping centre. It is the something place to go on the weekend. So if you want to pause the video now, go through the answers by yourself, trying to figure out what would go in the right spaces. We're going to go ahead now and look at the answers. Now that you've had a chance to go through the questions by yourself, let's take a quick look at some of the answers. So here are the questions that you just had a moment to work out. For number 1 then, I love English, it is the blank lesson in the world. Possible answers may include the best, greatest, most enjoyable. So those are just a few that I've came up with myself. If you've got anything different, just have a look over your answers and decide, is it a superlative? Does it follow some of the rules that we've just looked at that would actually qualify it as a superlative? Number 2. I went to the concert last night. It was so loud, it was the blank concert I've ever been to. So this one is actually a little bit trickier. So the ones I've came up with here is the loudest, the worst, and the best. And this is something that will help us understand why superlatives are so important. If you have a look there, loudest, worst, and best, these are all quite different superlatives. And using one of those could possibly change the meaning of the sentence. It could mean that the concert was really enjoyable if it was the best, or it could be something that the speaker doesn't really enjoy or really can't stand if you use a word like worst. So think carefully when you're selecting your superlatives, because they really do affect the outcome of the sentence and the message you're trying to convey. Number 3. Jamie gives a lot of money to charity. He is the blank person I've ever met. So the answers I came up with were kindest, sweetest, or most caring. Again, if you've got anything that's slightly different to that, have a look, have a think, and see if it will qualify as a superlative. And the final one, question 4. I can't stand going to the shopping centre. It is the blank place to go on the weekend. So the answers came up with are worst, most horrid, or most boring. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at something slightly different. Now we're going to move on and have a look at comparatives. So just like the superlatives that we just went through, these are a different form of adjectives. So what are comparatives? Comparative adjectives are used to compare differences between two objects. They modify them, so they make them either larger, smaller, faster, or higher. So it's important to understand these in terms of making a comparison between different adjectives. How do we use them? Comparative adjectives are used to compare one noun to another noun. So you have a noun, which again is the name of a place, person, object, or thing, and a comparative adjective helps us to make a comparison between two different nouns. Now we've got a few common comparatives. So if you have a look at the table, we've got our comparatives here on the left hand side, and we've got an example of how to use these in a sentence on the right hand side. So the first one, we've got brighter. You can see here that rather than just being bright, it's got the ER on the end of it, which helps us to actually compare it to something else. So the sun is brighter in the morning. The second one is more difficult. If we have a look at the example, I find English more difficult than subjects like English. The next one is younger. My sister is younger than me. So again, we're thinking about using that adjective there to help us compare a noun to another noun. His sister is a noun, and that's what we're comparing to ourselves with. Next one is stronger. I'm stronger today than I was last week. And the final one, cleverer. I am cleverer than I was because I revised a lot last week. Look at the example sentences and insert the correct comparative adjectives into each gap. So just like we did on the previous task when we were going through the superlatives, have a look through each sentence and think what would be the right word to use in the gap. So number 1, I am blank than I was a year ago. The music these days seems blank than it did when I was young. Oranges are far blank than apples. And number 4, the last one, Spain is a something country than England. So think what comparatives will go into those spaces. Take your time, and when you're ready, we're going to move on to have a look at the answers on the next slide. Check your answers against the ones below. So again, on the left hand side, we have the questions that we went through a moment ago. So number 1, I am blank than I was a year ago. So answers may include older, wiser, or more intelligent. Again, any answer is going to be correct here as long as the adjective you're using is a comparative. Number 2, the music these days seems blank than it was when I was young. So answers may include louder, better, or stranger. So again, these are just ones that I've came up with. As long as it is still a comparative, it's still a correct answer. Number 3, oranges are far something than apples. Again, their answers are juicier, fresher and smaller. And the last one, Spain is a blank country than England, and for my examples I've got hotter, busier or nicer. So again, check your answers, see if you agree with the ones that I've came up with. If you've got different ones, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that they are in fact comparative adjectives. If you're not too sure, have a look back at the video when you were faced with the definitions as well. Look at the writing example. Identify where the writer has used superlative and comparative adjectives. So what we're going to do now, we're going to test our understanding and to see how well you understand the different types of adjectives between the superlatives and the comparatives that we've just looked at. So first of all, the example says, I can't wait for the summer holidays. Last year was the best break ever. I can't wait to have 6 weeks without studying maths. It is the worst subject in the world. Studying things like English and business has made me cleverer. In the summer, I will play football every day. I'm the tallest member of my team, so I'm always needed to play in goal. I love the summer because the evenings are the brightest of the year and it means we can stay out and play longer. So now what I'd like you to do is just to pause the video, spend some time going through the passage and identifying where the different superlative and comparative adjectives have been used in this response. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. If you need more time, please feel free to pause the video. Now we're going to go and have a look at all of the ones that are shown in this example. So for the first part then, I can't wait for the summer holidays. Last year was the best break ever. So we've got that word best here, which is going to be a superlative. It shows that the last summer was the best one that the speaker of the piece has ever had. I can't wait to have 6 weeks without studying maths. It is the worst subject in the world. So we have worst there being highlighted because of course it is a comparative. So compared to all the other subjects this person has studied, maths seems to be the worst one. So it says, studying things like English and business have made me cleverer. So again, this must be a comparative because it is talking about using the ER, which we of course know is something you use when you're talking about a comparative. In the summer, I will play football every day. I am the tallest member of my team. So think about that there. The tallest means it must be the highest extent, so therefore it would be the superlative as well. So tallest would be highlighted in yellow. I am the tallest member of my team, so I'm always needed to play in goal. I love the summer because the evenings are the brightest of the year. Again, brightest, you don't get any higher than the brightest, or you don't get brighter than the brightest, so it therefore must be a superlative. Because the evenings are the brightest of the year and it always means we can stay out and play longer. So those are the superlatives and comparative adjectives in the passage. If there's anything else that you think is important to point out about this passage, please feel free to identify them yourselves or leave us a comment at the end of this video as well. If you need any additional help or support, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, as I've said before, you can always leave us a comment, like and subscribe, or if you can't find anything on our channel, please check out our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks so much guys for watching this video and the best of luck with all your revision in the future.